Okay, about the trade war. So
Yeah.
there's some interesting development, right? The
Mm.
first the US Federal Appeal Court ruled against the Trump's tariffs.
Yeah.
Basically upheld the lower court, the Federal Trade Court in New York, and saying this is illegal. The tariffs
Yeah.
you have in illegal. Now it's heading to the Supreme Court, which everybody expect that, we'll head there anyway. What now? According to Trump, the reason the Federal Appeals Court ruled against his tariffs is because he said the judges who are against him are the Democrat appointee, mainly I think Obama's appointee,
Yeah.
and the other one there I think it's 7-2 or something. There were two people who did support his tariffs, and those are his, I guess, the Republican appointees. Now, if we use that logic, the Supreme Court has now six Republican appointees and three Democrats appointees. Now, if that's the case, then I guess the Supreme Court will support Trump's tariffs. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you're right. In fact, that's the universal consensus here in Britain that the Supreme Court will find in Trump's favour. I have to say that I'm not an expert in this law, in U.S. constitutional law, but to me it looks absolutely clear that both the lower court, the commercial court, and the Court of Appeal are absolutely right. I mean, a tariff is a tax. The only authority entitled to impose taxes in the United States is Congress. Congress has not authorized these tariffs, so they are unconstitutional. And Trump relying on emergency legislation to impose these tariffs is to twist the meaning of that word far beyond any conceivable sense. So I think they're absolutely right, but I think the Supreme Court in the United States probably will come to that view. And in some ways, by the way, I hope it does, because I'll tell you what I think. I think that one of the reasons why Trump and other people in the US, in his administration, have been dancing around these bone crushing sanctions that Lindsey Graham and
Mhm,
Richard Blumenthal have been talking about is because if the Supreme Court decides against Trump,
mhm.
then they can activate this bill.
Yeah.
And they will then say that whatever tariffs they have imposed derive their authority from this specific bill, and that the tariffs have therefore been authorized by Congress. So we can impose tariffs on anyone and everyone, anywhere around the world, on the grounds that they're trading with the Russians in some way. And they might not be trading directly, but they can be trading indirectly or something of that kind. Now, I don't want to see that happen because I don't want a legislative um, obstacle, or at least a legislative basis for this ever to be created, because then it will be much more difficult to reverse in the future. I mean, you'd have to get the legislation repealed, which we know how difficult that is.
Mhm.
So I'd rather leave the mess in the messy way it is at the moment, and then a future president can just come along and, with a stroke of the pen, cancel all of these things. So, I mean, that's the only reason why, on balance, I wouldn't mind if Trump won this one, but it's for this very, very narrow reason and for no other.
One thing I noticed, the Supreme Court is getting, I don't know, more and more messy in a way.
Oh yeah.
That in this case, I think everybody can see this is unconstitutional. It's illegal. Okay, what
Yeah.
Trump is doing. But I find in the past there are also some clear-cut cases. What the Supreme Court does is that it doesn't outright, go either way. It kind of like either find some procedural problems to send it back to lower court. They did that in the past. Or they would say, okay, you have, this are the problems we see, it's not appropriate. But in general, we don't want to overthrow the whole thing. So they kind of like almost trying to find a middle ground. Don't you
Yeah.
think that's a possibility too?
Well, that's absolutely right, and that's exactly what the Supreme Court is doing, because the Supreme Court is becoming more and more politicized,
Uh-huh.
and it is operating within a much more polarized political system, a more fractured political system. So they're making decisions in very politicized cases, and
Mhm.
instead of doing what judges are supposed to do, which is follow the law where it leads them, they are doing the opposite. They're trying to shape or reshape the law
Mhm.
to satisfy whatever political pressures are being exerted on them at any particular point in time. It's a further symptom of the decay in the United States.
Mhm. To just to give you an example
Mm.
how messy this whole thing is.
Yeah.
Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary,
Oh
he of
God,
course
not
is
him.
pushing very hard on Trump's behalf for this tariff
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
His company, who right now, Cantor Fitzgerald, right now is
Yeah.
run by his son, Brendan, I think
Yeah.
it's Brendan Lutnick. They are betting against this, actually. They
Yeah.
are offering a
Yeah.
service to buy the tariff rights, which means, so if you are a company, you are paying tariffs right
Yeah.
now. I give you 20 to 30% of whatever you're paying now. And to buy the rights, which means if it gets struck down, you will get your tariff money back, but that you will have to pay me. So if you don't get struck down, you will earn like 20, 30% of the
Yeah.
tariffs you already paid. So his company, Cantor Fitzgerald, is now betting against
Yeah.
the tariffs
In
when
other
he
words,
himself is pushing for it.
yeah. Yeah.
This is
I
very
mean,
American, isn't it?
it's very American, and I would call it corrupt, because ultimately it means that Lutnick wins, whichever way it goes, which is very American too, by the way. I have to say, I mean, Lutnick is, along with Peter Navarro and Stephen Moran, these are three individuals that I find. I find it very difficult to talk about them because my feelings about them are so strong that it's probably better that I don't express in words. Lutnick, I mean, how could a person like that could ever become a secretary? I
Mhm.
simply can't even begin to understand. Moran is now been put into the Supreme Court,
Yeah,
not sorry, the Federal
the Federal
Reserve
Reserve.
Board,
Uh-huh.
and well, Navarro is on Fox every day, persuading India
Mhm.
that it would be even better to go get even closer to China, because I mean the rude things he's saying about India are just off the scale.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just incredible that these three people hold the positions that they do.
Another thing is, I think a few months ago, the Japanese media actually reported that when they were negotiating with the US delegations about the tariffs,
Mm.
apparently there was so much chaos there that the Japanese was kind of like didn't even know what to do. So one example, like a Besant, Ludnick, and then there is a trade representative. His name is Jameson Creer. So
Yeah.
the three of them would argue in front of the Japanese delegation because they couldn't agree on what they want. They were arguing in front of them. So this was the
Unbelievable.
Japanese media.
It doesn't, well, I say unbelievable. I'm afraid it doesn't surprise me, but well, I didn't know. That's not been reported, by the way, in
No.
the media here in Europe. But
Mhm.
I mean, it ought to be. I mean, these three individuals, well, even Besant himself, who's perhaps the least bad of them, but this group of people are, in my opinion, disastrous. I
Mhm.
mean, Stephen Moran, back in the um, during the April retaliatory tariff trade war. I don't. I'm sure you remember. He wrote this absolutely crazy
Yeah.
justification for it, in which he said that one of the reasons why all these countries should be paying the Americans tariffs is because the United States provides them all with protection. Straight out of Al Capone. I mean, it was just incredible reading this. And there it was, and it was official statement by the U.S. government, and it was published on the website of the White House.
Uh-huh. Maybe China should use that as a way to get rid of all the tariffs, saying, okay, we don't need your protection. Get rid of all your militaries around us, military bases around us. So we don't pay the tariffs, the protection.
Absolutely, absolutely correct. Yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
Um, U.S. now seems like is pushing for early meeting between Xi Jinping and Trump. They're even talking about September. So now there's not an official report,
Mm.
but if you look at the Brookings institution, they just had an article called "The Countdown to a Trump-Xi Summit." So
Yes.
I don't see anything in China's side saying anything like that.
No.
Do you get the feeling US actually do want to get things going? Because the negotiation they ended in August last time, and they were saying in 2 to 3 months they're going to resume the discussion. But in the meantime, so for example, the soybean is a real problem now. The farmers the soybean farmers, so they really want China to buy some soybeans, and of course the rare earth is still an issue,
Yeah.
etc. So I got the feeling U.S. is now want to have an early meeting with China. Either their
Yes.
delegation resume earlier
Yes.
negotiations, or maybe direct
Yes.
a meeting Xi and Trump.
Yes,
So.
and objectively, I would support it. I would want to see the president of the United States and the president of China meeting, and working out and ironing out all of these things,
Mhm.
all of these problems. But of course, again, with the way in which the Americans do this, it makes it very difficult. It's like, I mean, it's well known that Trump was trying to get a meeting with Putin for months
Mhm.
before the meeting in Anchorage happened. And then Trump imposes all these tariffs on India, and he apparently telephones uh, India, Delhi 4 times, and he wants to speak to Modi and gets very upset and very angry when Modi doesn't want to speak with him. The point is that all of these countries want to talk to the United States, but they have to be in a position where they can talk about something. Nobody wants to be hectored and lectured and told what to do and bullied. And of course, Xi Jinping is going to take exactly the same stance that you would expect him to. He's going to say to the Americans, look, I'm happy to meet Trump. Of course I am. I but before I do, I want to know what I'm discussing. I mean, what exactly are the Americans coming forward with? And is this something that I can realistically discuss in China's interests? Because China is the country, obviously, that I have responsibility for. Obviously, because China and the United States are great countries and they have a joint responsibility in the world. We understand the importance of a meeting. But for there to be a meeting, there must be some point to it.
Mhm.
I don't think the Americans ever get this because I think, especially Trump, imagines that if he can meet Xi Jinping through sheer force of personality, he's going to manage to get Xi Jinping, of all people, to come round to his thinking.
Trump in particular, he truly believed, he's art
Yeah,
of a deal
yeah,
kind of a
yeah,
thing. But I find the U.S. President all a little bit like that. I think Obama
yeah,
also have this idea that he somehow is very charming. He could
yeah.
get his way, through personal influence. And
Mm,
I think Bill Clinton is a little bit like that too, don't you
yeah.
think? The U.S.
Absolutely,
president.
it's absolutely. This is correct. I mean, the Americans place far too much reliance on charm, on their own personal charm, which they do have, by the way, and also at the same time on the, their bullying and all of that. And they think that great nations like China, India,
Mhm.
Russia will somehow fall for this, and then they always come away surprised and angry when when it doesn't work. Now, if you I come back to what the Russians say about the Chinese, that that you have to
Mhm.
work with them, and that they're very, very careful. They look at every single point. You have to sort it out. But when you get there, you can absolutely bank it. That's what the Americans should. How the Americans should approach China. They should meet with the Chinese. They should meet with the Chinese in good faith. They
Mhm.
should go through it problem by problem. They should sort it out. They should be very clear what their true interests are, not the fictitious interests of the geopolitical chess games that they always play. And then we could have a proper, real meeting between Trump and Xi. And no doubt the Chinese could do all kinds of things that would be really helpful. I mean, generally constructively helpful for the Americans, and the Americans could do the same for the Chinese, and the world would altogether be a better place. The Americans never do this. They want to rush in, impose their ideas, get the other side to agree to them, because again, for them, it's a zero-sum game. They treat negotiations as a battle towards achieving some kind of victorious outcome. And there's never any way that China will ever play that game.
It's very frustrating. For me, a Chinese American, I see both sides, right? I find, to me, it
Yeah,
seems so obvious. Why don't you just drop all this nonsense tariffs, which is hurting the American consumers?
yeah,
And then in return, you will get the China to buy those soybeans and
yeah,
give you the rare earth you want. And now also they're discussing apparently buying 500 Boeing airplanes. I mean,
yeah,
all these will happen for benefit United States in a
yes,
very
exactly.
profound way.
Yeah,
500 airplanes, a lot of jobs for years to come.
yes,
And the soybeans, you're absolutely hurting those farmers when China is not buying any. All you need to do is to drop all this nonsense. Let's say, okay, keep 10%. I think that would the deal is done. Whether
yeah.
with your visit China or not, the deal will be done. Why can't they just do that? It's so simple
Mm.
to me.
Well, because we talked about all of those hang-ups and pathologies that we talked about, which get in the way. I repeat again, Sophia, that you approach this as a Chinese person does. It's a very, very pragmatic, realistic, practical way. And by now, it ought to be obvious that when dealing with Western leaders, not just the Americans, things are never that straightforward.
Yeah. It's very frustrating,
Yeah.
so okay.
Yeah.